Oh, what's up? Hey, I used to do a bunch of tips and tricks videos, and it's been a long time, and you guys have been asking for it. You're like, hey, remember those tips and tricks videos you used to do? Well, maybe you should do another one because we're in the mood for some more tips and tricks. So in this video, I'm gonna show you how to build a dining room table. I'm just kidding. Tips and tricks, let's do it. One question we get asked all the time is, how do I stop blowing nails out the side of my piece when I'm nailing two pieces of wood together? And this is a great question. And believe it or not, there is a right way and a wrong way to use a brad nailer. So you can see I got a nice blowout here. I did that intentionally, but all these ones are perfectly seated in the middle of the board. Now, one thing people don't realize about brad nailers is that the nails are fairly predictable. For example, if you shoot a nail out of the gun this direction, it is typically going to deflect to the right or to the left this way. So if you're orienting the gun like this, I'm gonna angle it just a little bit, it's gonna wanna deflect out this way or shoot the opposite way. So when you're nailing two boards together, instead of holding the brad nailer like this, which is gonna be a greater likelihood that the nail's gonna fly out, you actually want to spin it around. That way, if it deflects to the left or the right, it's doing so within the piece and it's not going to pop out the side. So then you can just stick it on there. And it's going to be way harder to get that pesky nail that sticks out the side. There's two more things that you should also consider which will help making nailing a lot easier, and that is the length of your nail. Don't use like 2.5 inch long nails if you're hooking two pieces of 1/2 inch plywood together. I usually like to go double the thickness going into a piece than what I'm nailing through. So if I'm nailing through 1/2 inch material, I use 1.5 inch nail. So I got 1 inch of grab on the other side. 2 inches is too long, and it's way more likely that you're gonna get that blowout. The other thing is, on most pneumatic nail guns, there's an adjustment right down here at the bottom. Sometimes it's at the back, sometimes it's down here. And that adjusts the depth that you're gonna drive the nail into the piece. And you wanna have it set so that it's just barely below the surface. All you're looking for is enough room to get a little filler in there and cover up your nail hole. You don't wanna be blowing that nail way through because, again, it's gonna be sending so much pressure into the piece that you could have that blowout, and you're gonna lose some holding power on your piece because the nail head's not gonna be towards the top, it's gonna be like in the middle of the piece that you're nailing through. So make sure your adjustment's right, your nail length is right, and orient the gun in the correct position as you're nailing, and you're probably not gonna get those blowouts anymore. Now, this is the bane of a lot of woodworkers' existence, is when you glue two pieces of wood together like this and you have a tight corner and you get some squeeze out right there in the corner, and it is a pain to get rid of, especially if you're gonna be putting finish on your piece because it's gonna be highlighted if you don't get all that glue out of the way. Now, the problem is if you take regular sandpaper, you can sand pretty close, but you're still gonna have this line of glue that's almost impossible to get to. Now, a card scraper usually works really well for this because you can get a card scraper in there nice and tight and then you can scrape away. But even with a card scraper, it's really hard to get right into that corner. So what I like to do is have a dedicated chisel just for scraping. And I say dedicated because you kind of got to ruin the chisel a little bit to make it a dedicated scraping chisel. This is just a cheap $18 Stanley Bailey chisel. It's 1.25 inches, which I think is a nice good width. And the reason a chisel works so good is because you can put a lot of pressure on it and you can get really tight into that corner. So what we're gonna do is essentially just make this chisel into a big card scraper. So you're gonna take your honing rod and you're gonna run it over the front of that bevel. And what this is doing is this is adding a little burr that folds around the front of that chisel, and it creates kind of a hook the same way that it would on a card scraper. Now I can get this thing tight into that corner, and pulling away from the joint, I can scrape all of that glue out of the way. And then I can flip the piece around. I can do the same thing from the corner going in this direction, and it allows you to get all that glue out, and you're not gonna be pulling your hair out. I mean, that's why I have to wear a hat all the time, because I pulled all my hair out. Let's talk about sharpening for a second. Now, I have a set of these Veritas PM-V11 chisels. They're super nice, but even really nice chisels, you have to sharpen a lot if you want to keep them sharp. That makes sense. And you want to make sure you're sharpening them correctly. Now, the way that I typically sharpen is I use this Lee Nielsen honing guide right here. It's super easy. You just stick the chisel in there. It's shaped to fit the side of the chisel, and it helps you hold it at the proper angle, and you can run it on this little wheel back and forth across your sharpening stones. But what is the proper angle? Lots of people are like, how do you get this thing set up correctly to the right angle for your chisel? Well, step number one is look at the description on your chisel and figure out what your bevel angle is. On these, anything above 3/8 of an inch, it's a 25-degree bevel with a 2-degree micro bevel. Both those are really important. So what I do, so I don't have to figure this out every single time, is I get it set at the proper angle for the bevel. The way I do that is just use one of these digital angle finders. You can stick it right on the edge of the chisel, and it allows you to dial in that angle exactly to 25 degrees, exactly to 2 degrees. Now, when I find that, so I don't have to do that every time, I like to score a line on the flat back of my chisel. I score one for my main bevel at 25 degrees, and I score another line for my micro bevel at 2 degrees. That way, when I'm ready to sharpen, all I have to do is stick it in my honing guide right to that line, lock it down, and I know that's gonna be at the perfect angle to get the exact same bevel every single time. Now, scoring the back of a chisel can be kind of difficult because this is hardened steel, which is what you want in a chisel. So I found that these little scorers that you actually use to score laminate countertops work really well. You can pick up one of these for a few dollars on Amazon or at Home Depot, and this allows you to get a nice scored line that won't come off every time you sharpen the chisel. But with those scored lines on my 2 bevels, I can sharpen my chisels in 30 seconds, going back and forth between the stones, and it takes all the guesswork out of what angle your bevel should be at. I actually scored the back of the Bourbon blade at the correct angle too. Yes, you can sharpen the Bourbon blade exactly the same way that you can sharpen a chisel in the honing guide and everything, which makes it awesome because it's super easy to keep very nice and sharp. One more thing I wanted to mention, after you do all your sharpening, your bevels are the correct angle, it's a good idea to strop your chisel, which basically means to take a piece of leather and you're gonna run it with the bevel side down, back towards yourself. You're gonna do this 15, 20 times. But if you don't have a stropping strap or a piece of kangaroo leather laying around, a piece of plywood actually works really well. You're gonna do the same thing, bevel side down, pull it towards yourself 15 to 20 times. This is gonna put a really nice shine on your chisel and ensure that it stays super sharp. It's also a good way to keep your chisel sharp in between your regular sharpening on the stone. Okay. You wear a hat in the shop, then chances are by the time you're done working for the day, your hat kind of looks like this, covered in sawdust. I know this is kind of a silly tip, but it works really well and you're gonna thank me later. Now, I used to just take the air compressor and blow the dust off. It works pretty good, but if the dust is really impacted in there, the problem is the force from the air pressure leaves these like lines all over your hat. And unless you do every little square inch, it's not a uniformed look because you have these like little worm tracks. So a few years ago, I found out that either a boot brush or a beard brush is your best friend to cleaning off your hats. Check this out. You just take the brush and start brushing. These hats are available on our website, by the way, but it allows you to get in all those little nooks and crannies and get your hat nice and clean and back to normal. And you can also just use it on your beard while you're at it. As you know, we use Rubio Monocoat around here a lot. It's probably one of our favorite finishes. We use it on all sorts of things. But there is one huge drawback to Rubio, and that is it's really hard to get out of nooks and crannies and cracks and around knot holes. And when you put it on, it's heavily pigmented. But as you wipe it down, you lose a lot of that pigment and you get the final look that you want. But any place that there's a crack or a corner, the pigment stays in there, and then it's just like this highlighted, harsh line. So how do you get Rubio out of those areas? Well, Craig my assistant actually figured this out. So this is his trick and it works so well. We were putting some Rubio in the Airstream and he came in, he's like, dude, I figured out this great way to do it. And I was like, genius. And that's just the blowgun on the air compressor. If you come in close, you can see this little crack we have in the corner. Obviously, we wouldn't want this crack here if we were constructing a piece, but there's some Rubio pigment just stuck right in there. If we take our compressor, it blasts it all out, and then you can just wipe it off. It also works really well in these corners down here, inside of cabinet boxes. You just blast it out. Sometimes you have to do it a few times to get it all out of there. But it gets all the Rubio out of those hard to get to places with your rag, and it'll give you a nice uniform look when you're finishing with this product. I use half-lap joinery a lot in different pieces of furniture that I put together, and I always get asked from you guys, how do you ensure that your half-laps are perfect, meaning half the cut on one piece of wood and half the cut on the other piece of wood? Now, if you're doing these on the table saw with just a miter gauge like this or on your crosscut sled, there's a super simple way to find out exactly that halfway point, and it's just this. Basically, you're gonna take your piece of wood, you're gonna butt it up against the blade, and you're gonna lower the blade down to where you think it is just below halfway up on the piece, okay? Make sure you're below halfway for this to work. Then you're gonna turn the table saw on and you're gonna run the piece through. Now, we have cut part way through this piece of wood. Now, what we're gonna do is we're gonna flip it around so that that cut part is now facing up, and we're gonna do the exact same thing. Now you can see there's a thin tab, so we're almost halfway on each side, but we're not quite there yet. So now you're simply gonna just incrementally raise the saw a little bit, flipping it back and forth until you get a paper thin piece of wood. So now you can see there are literally just fibers there, which means that you are within a 64th of an inch, probably less than that. Now you could bump it up just a hair, but by going back and forth from one side to the other and slowly finding that middle, you're gonna ensure that you get a perfect half lap, that's the word, on both sides. Couldn't be easier. This is my helical head joiner, and a lot of people don't really know what that means. Helical head means that it's at a spiral, and instead of knife blades, which are straight and long, there's these individual little blades that run across the cutter head. Now, one really good tip on the joiner is that when this is running, don't put your fingers inside of it, because it'll cut your fingers off. We've all been there. You got this tiny little screw and you put it on the end of a screwdriver, and then you're just hoping that it stays on there as you get it into a cabinet or something without it falling off, and it just doesn't want to stay on the end of your screwdriver. Same thing happens with these drivers. Now you can buy magnetic head screwdrivers, magnetic head drivers, but then sometimes those are a pain because sometimes they're magnetic and they're picking up little metal shavings and stuff, and you don't want them to be that way. Well, there's this little thing that's been on the market for years. I mean, this thing's not new technology at all, but it's super cool if you didn't know about it, and it magnetizes and demagnetizes anything you want. So you can take this screwdriver, which as you can see is not magnetic, it won't pick up these screws, and you just insert it through the slot that says magnetize, put it in there a couple times, and then magically, oh, it becomes a magnet, and now things will stick to the end of your screwdriver. It also works really good on your driver heads, and you can get those pesky little screws to stay put. Now, the top, which is the demagnetizer, has these little stair steps, and I always wondered what those are for, so I looked it up. And apparently, if you put it in on the bottom step, it's demagnetizing the piece, but sometimes it doesn't do it very strong. So the farther up the steps you go, the less and less magnetic the thing becomes. Don't ask me how this works, but that's why the little stair steps are there. put a link down in the video description. This is like a few dollars and it's pretty handy to have in your toolbox if you're tired of dropping those screws all over the place. Here's a pretty cool trick you can do with an empty sparkling water can. So make sure it's completely empty. And then you're just gonna take a knife and you're gonna cut the bottom off. Try and be as uniformed as you can. Cut all the way around like this, okay? And then you got this nice shell on there like that. And then what you're gonna do is you're gonna grab a beer and you're gonna open it up and you're gonna get rid of this top like that. And then you're just gonna slide this over, kind of line up the openings the best you can. Gotta push really hard. Look, nobody's ever gonna tell. Tastes like really good sparkling water. I get asked sometimes, how come it's so hard for me to push material through my planer? And a likely scenario is that your beds are not waxed properly. It's important to keep your beds on your planer, your joiner, your table saw nice and waxed so that material can glide through and you're not fighting the friction of the surface itself. Now, a few times a year, I will clean off the entire surface with mineral spirits. I'll rub paste wax on there, I'll let it sit, and then I'll wipe that back off so that they're nice and smooth. That's kind of a pain. So a trick that you can do in between that, yearly, bi-yearly maintenance is just to keep a box of wax paper in your shop, and every once in a while, before you run material through, you just crumple it up like this and basically just rub the surface of your planer bed, and it's gonna transfer that paraffin wax from the wax paper directly onto your metal surface, and it's gonna keep it nice and smooth. Even if it looks kind of nasty, like this big spot here where Craig left the breakfast burrito. It still slides good. Kind of a cool tip. A friend of mine showed this to me when we were doing all the framing for the treehouse and we were marking out for studs, but it can work good in the wood shop too. So if you have to rough cut a bunch of lengths off a piece of wood, the way I would normally measure those out is I'd put the tape measure on there, bring it down here, lock that in place, and then let's say I'm doing every 20 inches, so I'd mark at 20, then I would go mark at 40, then I'd go mark at 60, then I would go mark at 80, and I'd cut all the pieces. Which that doesn't take very long, but a cool thing is if you take your pencil and you stick it in your clip just like that, then all you have to do is come along here, you mark at 20, come down here, you mark at 40, come down here, mark at 60, mark at 80, and you're done. Have you ever done this where you cut a piece of wood and for some reason you just go an inch too short and now you cut the wrong piece and you're out of material? Well, here is a helpful trick to help with that. Go to BOURBONMOTH.com and buy yourself a bourbon blade. It's not gonna help this situation at all, but you always feel better when you buy yourself cool things. So, just saying, couldn't hurt. Hey, I know those are kind of random and all over the place, but hopefully that helped somebody out there. Maybe you didn't know one of those or two of those, or maybe you knew all of them. And if you knew all those, well, then maybe you have some tricks that we don't know and you should let us know down in the comment section because we're always open to learning new things. Also, in the video description, we will link that magnetic thing and any other tools and supplies we use in this video. There's a link down to the bourbon blade if you're not tired of hearing about it. So go get yourself one of those. Also, if you're not on Patreon, can I just take a second and say you should be, because we're posting a ton of behind the scenes content over there. We do a weekly YouTube live. I mean, you're missing out. We do a biannual contest. I almost said concert, but we haven't gotten that far because we're not very good at singing. We do a biannual contest where you could win a chance for me to come out to your shop and build a project with you. Stay hydrated. No, see, I'm still just not the tagline kind of guy. We're out here on the golf course today to demonstrate how amazing Squarespace is at allowing you to build a professional looking website. You might be saying, what does that have to do with golf? Well, this is a golf ball. It takes balls to build a nice website. Boy, I really piped that one right down the middle. I wish I could tell everybody. On Squarespace you can, because people can sign up for your email newsletters. So I can tell everybody on our email list that I just hit that one right. Actually, it went a little right. This is a scorecard. It's where I just wrote down that I got a birdie on the last hole. Speaking of cards, did you know on Squarespace you can take cards in person directly through the Squarespace app? So if you want to sell in person, you can, or you can sell online. And the cool thing is it automatically updates the inventory on your website even when you're selling in person. Pretty cool, just like golf. Man, the sun is bright today. Good thing I have this sweet new Bourbon Moth golf hat available on my website. And with Squarespace, it was incredibly easy to add new products to the website. And you can add unlimited products. So we can come out with golf stuff, pickleball stuff, tennis stuff, baseball stuff, basketball stuff, hockey stuff, water polo stuff, and we can put it all on the website. Super simple. Right now we're driving down the fairway. Just like you can move your business forward with Squarespace, with all their sweet tools, like their SEO optimization. They use AI to do that, so that your website can be found when people search for it on websites like Google. Or, does anybody use anything besides Google nowadays? That was the wrong tool for the job. You don't want to find yourself using the wrong tool for the job, so try Squarespace. Just go to squarespace.com/bourbonmothwoodworking and you're going to get 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain when you use the coupon code BOURBONMOTHWOODWORKIng. The link right down there and in the video description. Put me down for a 2.